Hey, Village, and welcome to Womanhood Decoded. This is the space where we tackle the hard stuff, celebrate the wins, and everything in between. I am your host, Tasha Ray. I want to ground this episode by beginning with this quote. The better you know yourself, the better your relationship with the rest of the world. Toni Collette. Before I continue, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to listen or to watch today's episode. Your support is truly the foundation for all I seek to accomplish with this podcast. Today, we're going to spend some time exploring why getting to know ourselves is the key to unlocking a fulfilling life. Also, hello, June. Welcome to a new month. Finally. Ever wonder why there is no shortage of self-help books, online communities, and seminars, all dedicated to the topic of self-improvement? Well, I'd like to offer this for your consideration. By and large, people know that they need to either stop habits or start others. But with so much advice out there, how do we find what can really work for us? After all, we are each complex individuals coming from various cultures with histories, habits, views, different foods, and personalities that make up who we are. It is these collection of differences that make it near impossible for there to be a one-size-fits-all formula to an undertaking when it comes to healing. At the root of self-help is the desire to be healed or to be renewed. In the book Clarity and Connection by young Pablo, he writes, "True healing happens when you begin to value your peace more than your familiar patterns. It is in the stillness, not the struggle, that clarity arrives. Healing isn't about becoming a new person. It's about meeting the person you've always been with honesty and without judgment." I found this book, but particularly this passage, to be so moving because of how it focuses on the connection between the pursuit of peace and personal healing. One thing I keep coming back to on my own personal journey is that the motivation behind doing anything will greatly influence the outcome. If the reason for doing the thing, even if it's a good thing, is rooted in something that isn't quite positive, the results will often match the intent. So how can we make sure that our motives are pure? First, we need to make sure that we are being honest with ourselves. This will help us to self-correct if we find we are moving down a path that isn't in alignment with who we are working to become. Next, we need to be willing to really go deep, to tap into the hidden and possibly tender places of ourselves that we probably downplay or put on the back burner. Finally, we need to commit to choosing to do the work, be it getting a therapist or doing a practice that will start the process of reprogramming our lives. Now, while I just gave you 3 steps for self-evaluation, this doesn't mean that the undertaking of self-improvement is as simple as 1, 2, 3. In fact, it's quite the opposite. But we all know that through hard work and sacrifice comes growth. Growth and the possibility of change is, after all, the point. I think it's important to truly understand that healing and change often requires some level of discomfort. Even if you look at any scar that you've ever gotten, you know that there was not only a process, but that the steps needed to get better required time. Somehow, pop culture has sent the message that we can heal with little to no effort, almost overnight. But that's just not how healing works. I'm not saying you need to feel like you're in a bloody battle with yourself, but I do want you to brace yourself for the reality of the journey and process of healing. You've heard me say this a few times, and I'll continue to say it because it is important to remember that progress and not perfection is the goal. Also, keep in mind that whatever it is that you are attempting to shift or change in your life probably took years to get to the place you realized change was needed. So it's going to take some time and some effort to replace and replenish the parts of yourself that need to be rebuilt and nourished. So let's go deeper. When we talk about healing, especially in the context of knowing ourselves, what we're really talking about is integration. Not just identifying what's wrong or what needs improvement, but integrating all of the parts of ourselves that we've often pushed away. That includes the parts that we are taught to hide, the versions of ourselves that emerged in survival mode, and even the aspirational parts we are still growing into. One of the most compelling pieces of research that supports this comes from the field of psychology. Dr. Martin Stegman, a pioneer in the field, taught us that true well-being doesn't just come from fixing what's broken, but from cultivating what makes us strong. His PERMA model, positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment, plays the foundation for sustainable happiness and fulfillment. And embedded in each of those pillars is one essential ingredient: self-awareness. When we know what brings us meaning, when we understand how we engage with the world, and when we're honest about what fulfills us, we move differently. We speak differently. We process situations and circumstances all from a different perspective. Speaking of perspectives, thank you to each and every one of you again from whatever platform that you are joining me from today. I truly enjoy being with you and thank you for spending this time with me. You see, that's the real healing. Not just bouncing back, but becoming. Now, isn't that a novel concept? We're no longer trying to drag ourselves along or push ourselves through challenges and hardships. The starting place of knowing yourself is something psychologists call self-concept. It's how we see ourselves, not just who we think we are, but how we believe we show up in the world. Researchers like Carl Rogers, whose work forms the foundation of humanistic psychology, believed that the gap between our real self and our ideal self, that gap creates internal tension. Another way to think about this is when we act in ways that aren't aligned with who we believe we are meant to be, that's when we suffer. I'm sure we can each resonate with this occurrence. At this point in our lives, most of us have experienced a set of circumstances that has made us question what we are taught, forcing us to forge a path that aligns with who we're growing to become versus who we were taught to be. Healing then becomes about closing that gap, not in a performative way, not in a way that says, let me fix myself so I'm more likable way, but in a way that says, this is who I am. I honor that, and I am choosing to evolve from here. One of the most overlooked but powerful tools in personal healing is emotional vocabulary. When we arm ourselves with relevant knowledge, we have the opportunity to see with new eyes. Dr. Mark Brackett from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence introduced the concept of emotional granularity, the ability to specifically name and distinguish between your feelings. It's about being able to truly pinpoint how we feel at any given time. Think about this for a moment. The difference between saying, I feel great, and saying, I feel focused, happy, and maybe even a little excited. This precision not only provides more clarity, but it gives us power. It opens the door for action. So part of knowing yourself isn't just about sitting in a room, possibly meditating or journaling, though those things are a valuable and great starting place. It's about learning how to speak your internal truth with accuracy, because language shapes our reality. This is because our thoughts become words, and then a pattern of behavior emerges. Research has shown that individuals who can name their emotions precisely are more resilient, have better mental health, and are more likely to navigate conflict constructively. So, if we want to heal, we have to be fluent in the language of our own inner thoughts and our inner lives. Another thing worth exploring is the myth of a quote-unquote fixed self. This is where we unlearn everything about perfection because there's no room for that when true healing is centered. Too often we hear phrases like, "That's just how I am," or "I've always been this way." While there's nothing wrong with owning your personality traits, we have to leave room for the possibility of transformation. Also, acknowledging the fact that just because you have done things a particular way, no matter how long, doesn't mean that it's actually the right way to go about things. I found Dr. Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset to be truly illuminating on this topic. Her research emphasizes that a fixed mindset assumes our ability, intelligence, or emotional reactions are static or unmoving. A growth mindset, in contrast, believes that we can evolve with effort and intention. This is important because especially when exploring personal healing. Because if you believe you're stuck, if you believe your flaws are permanent, or that your pain will define you forever, then healing won't feel like it's within reach or even an option. It'll feel like a performance. But when we learn to accept that we're capable of change, that's when we give ourselves permission to heal for real. Let's get a little more practical in how we view growth and healing. Much of healing comes down to not just feeling better, but doing better. And that requires new habits and new patterns of behavior. The kind of routines that support our well-being. James Clear, in his book Atomic Habits, writes something worth our consideration. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. It's not about perfection. It's about repetition. So, if you meditate once, great. But if you're able to carve out time to truly tap into stillness daily, even if it's only for 5 minutes, what you're doing is casting votes for your peace. Or if you go to the gym once, that's something. But if you start to integrate a healthy lifestyle into your everyday life, that's when your life has the possibility of truly shifting. If you opt to give yourself a positive or kind word, that's a start. But when that kindness becomes the tone of your inner dialogue, that's when you start rewriting your self-narrative. Healing is rarely a huge breakthrough moment. It's more often the accumulation of small choices made consistently. It's easy to think of self-work as something done in isolation, alone. And yes, solitude is the starting point, but it is not the whole journey. The truth is, we don't only heal in a vacuum. We heal through connection. Research from the Harvard study of adult development, the longest running study on human happiness, found that close relationships are the single greatest predictor of long-term well-being and fulfillment. Not money, not career success, not fame, but meaningful connections with others. So why is connection a factor in personal healing? The version of ourselves that shows up in relationships of any kind often reveals the work that we still need to do. Our village or circle is able to reflect back to us so we can truly see ourselves unfiltered and see whether or not we are actually making progress towards our goals. Are we being defensive? Do we shrink? Do we dominate? Do we avoid vulnerability? You see, those are not character flaws. They're messages. They're starting places. They're mirrors. They are invitations to go deeper. So, as you pursue personal healing, don't be afraid to allow room for those who support your journey to healing to be a part of your process. When appropriate, you can choose to let your circle hold space for your healing process. Stillness is a skill, especially in today's society. Stillness is an important aspect of your personal journey of healing. We live in a culture that celebrates the hustle, the grind, the constant forward motion. But healing requires stillness. Not just resting, but actually being still enough to listen to your inner self and to become truly conscious of your thoughts and motivations. In her book, Rest is Resistance, author Tasha, also known as the Nap Bishop, in her work points out that rest is not a luxury, it is a right to all humanity. More than that, she calls rest a form of resistance against grind culture and capitalism. Stillness is where the wisdom lives. It's where the noise dies down and clarity finds a way back to you. You don't have to be available to everyone. You don't have to fill every single moment with an activity. Part of healing is reclaiming your time, not just your schedule, but your inner bandwidth. Did you know the nervous system in our bodies has an important role in our healing? Your nervous system is deeply involved in every emotion you experience, whether you are angry, anxious, peaceful, happy, or content, your nervous system is either activated into fight or flight, or being regulated at rest, which creates equilibrium. According to Dr. Stephen Porges' work, our bodies have different states of safety and threat, and those states impact our ability to think clearly, speak clearly, and relate honestly. So, if you're healing, part of your work isn't just mindset, it's body work. Learning how to recognize when you're dysregulated. Learning how to ground yourself back into a place of safety, whether it is through breath work, intentional journaling, movement, music, yoga, meditation, exercise, whatever it is that works for you. You can't just think your way to healing. You have to also be able to feel your way there too. Now, let's shift how and look at what is also vital, but often overlooked in conversations about healing, and that is emotional maturity. What I'd like to bring into focus here is the art of emotional stewardship. That means taking responsibility for our inner landscape, not out of shame or blame, but from a place of intentional care. Emotional maturity doesn't mean superiority. It means developing the capacity to hold multiple truths at once. The grief and the gratitude, the uncertainty and the faith, the wounds or the scars and wisdom. It is the practice of responding instead of reacting, of not outsourcing our peace to others and their whims. It's recognizing that while your feelings are valid, they don't always have to be the driver's seat for how you navigate every day or each moment. Sometimes our feelings just need to be heard, acknowledged, and held with compassion. Dr. Susan David, in her book Emotional Agility, illustrates that one of the most powerful tools for resistance is our ability to acknowledge our emotions without letting them define us. In her book, she wrote, "Discomfort is the price of admission to a meaningful life." And that discomfort, when processed with grace, comes fueled with maturity that leads to clarity and inner deep alignment. Healing then just isn't about tending to old wounds. It's about building emotional muscles that support us as we move forward and as we navigate each day. It's about becoming the kind of person who can sit with complexity without shutting down. When we shift our focus from the past and focus rather on our healing, and that right there can empower us right now and that's how we get to see the real power of growth up close and personal. So often we think of letting go as this one-time release, like simply deleting. But the truth is, we can't truly delete anything from our lives, but we can reframe experiences. Letting go is a practice. It is not a solitary event. It's waking up each day and choosing not to revisit the thing that once hurt and caused pain. It's choosing not to let your past set the tone for your present. It is reminding yourself that healing doesn't mean forgetting, but it does mean forgiving yourself for how long you possibly carried what wasn't yours to hold. Neuroscience shows that our brains are pliable or moldable, that they literally can be rewired with repetition. So, the more we practice letting go, the more natural it becomes. But it takes intentional repetition. Letting go isn't forgetting. Letting go is reclaiming. Let me say this. Healing isn't just for you. When you choose to do the work of self-knowing and personal repair, you don't just change your own life, you impact everyone connected to you. Your children, your friends, your coworkers, and anyone you might care for, love, or respect. Healing is legacy work. When you learn how to speak with compassion, we model emotional intelligence for others. When we honor our boundaries, we normalize self-respect. When we choose joy without guilt, we light the way for others to do the same. That's the beauty of this journey. The work we do in private often becomes a beacon for others. So, as we begin to close this episode, I want to focus on the words that we began with, possibly hearing them with new insights. The better you know yourself, the better your relationship with the rest of the world. Toni Collette. Getting to know yourself is not a trend. It is not a weekend workshop. It is a life practice. It is about slowing down enough to witness yourself and then extending grace for the places that are still evolving. Your healing doesn't need to be this huge, loud thing. In fact, if it's authentic healing, it will be built with intention, brick by brick, with quiet focus. Like most things, for your healing to start, it just needs to be real. While others are affected, it's not just for them, but for you that you do this work. So, whether your healing looks like going to therapy, going to a class or a workshop, journaling, stillness, dance, poetry, or deep conversations, honor it. Because the world doesn't need a perfect you. It just needs the real you, whole, healing, and honest. Thank you so much for sharing this space with me today. If this episode resonated, I invite you to share it with someone who might need a gentle reminder to choose healing for themselves. Let's continue this conversation. Connect with me on social media or on LinkedIn. Reading your experiences you share in your messages is a reminder that we are in this together. Until next time, keep showing up, keep softening where you need to, and keep stepping into your truth. I am your host, Tasha Ray, and this has been Womanhood Decoded. Bye-bye.